Welcome to Game of Books with Cathi in South Dakota.
That's me, and Christie in South Florida.
That's me. We're two newbie writers sharing our take on wine, food, and mystery books.
And the authors who write them. Join us for the fun. Hey, Christie and everyone out there. Another awesome book club book to pair with some good food and wine.
You got that right. So today we're discussing Unspeakable Things by Jess Lowry. And this book, I got to say, is really dark, but it just seems so realistic, like so real to me. And I'm thinking it as a book club. Who knows where the discussions will go, but I imagine they might get a little deep, Don't you think?
Yeah. Right. Unspeakable Things, obviously you can imagine the content is pretty heavy. But Jess Lowry is such an amazing writer. She just draws you right into this world that she's painting. It's Minnesota in the 1980s, and I will say it is something that I was, what she writes about is something that I was familiar with growing up because it was only a few hours away from us.
Wow, that's really cool. And even though it's close to home for you, I felt like I connected with it as well. So it was a good book. Everybody should go get it.
Oh yeah. Yeah, everyone should pick this up for sure.
Yes.
It's a great book club book. And I can't wait to connect with the author herself next week when we have a Corks and Conversation with Jess Lowry.
I know, me too. I even saw her before at a conference. I attended one of her workshops, and she gives such great writing advice. She does on her website too, but even more so, she seems like a really cool person and a nice person to share a glass of wine with. So I'm looking forward to that. I know,
I'm excited. Yeah.
But speaking of wine, why don't you tell everyone what wine we are sharing today?
Okay. Well, so I chose AVA Grace Rosé. It's an inexpensive rosé. And I'll tell you the tasting notes first, and then I'll tell you why I chose it.
Oh. You know what? I didn't even realize I liked rosés, but this is pretty good. Maybe I'm just thirsty.
Maybe. The AVA Grace Rosé is bright with a nose of wild roses. The palate showcases a fresh, crisp, dry style boasting with flavors of apricot, honeysuckle, and a balanced acidity.
Yum.
It's supposed to be a medium-bodied mouthful, whichever.
Take a
rounded
mouthful
out with a
and
dry finish. Yeah, right. So what do you think?
Like I said, I don't know. I mean, I'm having it on ice. Is that okay?
I always like my white wine on ice because I just like to stay that cool temperature.
I feel like rosé looks good on ice, and I live in Florida, so the ice just melts right away anyway. Better drink faster, right?
In South Dakota, I would not need the ice, I will be honest, but
you can go get some snow.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so I'm really excited to tell you why I chose this wine.
Yes, I'm dying to know.
So the book is set in the 1980s. And I mean, from like the first page, you just get all these amazing 80s references. And I was this exact age in the 1980s. I think I must be the same age as the author. And so this completely spoke to me. So I Googled quick, what was the main wine in the 1980s? And when I got the answer, I remembered it. It was Sutter Home White Zin. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
Like that was the wine
I don't
of
remember
the 80s.
It that much, but I guess I probably remember my mom drinking it more, and then...
Yeah, it was like the wine. And actually, I found a really interesting article that I will link on our blog post about how Sutter Home kind of accidentally created this white Zinfandel. It's a really interesting story.
Oh, good.
But now people kind of turn their nose up to white Zin, because it was such a dated thing, I think. But I found an article, another one, I educated myself here, that says basically if you like rosé, you like white Zinfandel. That they're pretty much the same concept. And I thought that was so interesting. So that's why I chose another cheap wine, like the Sutter Home was very, inexpensive, and AVA Grace certainly was inexpensive too.
Right.
But it was interesting because the person who wrote this article said, if you say you don't like white Zinfandel but like rosé, that's like saying that you like baguettes but not bread. Like, that's how close in relationship they are. And I thought that was so funny.
Yeah.
That it's such a dated wine. But anyway, so that's the... but I thought it'd be a fun thing to serve at a book club, just to stir all that conversation about the setting and the background of the book.
Right. I actually got a can.
Oh, you did?
Yes.
Isn't that fun?
It's a half bottle size.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I was like, oh, this is perfect because I'm, trying to be good in January. I don't need a whole bottle. So.
Well, there you go. That was perfect. Okay. So if I was serving this at a book club, I would also serve, inspired by the book, and a very 1980s recipe, is a 7-layer salad. Do you remember there's a big picnic scene?
Yes.
And there's a huge buffet, and this main character just goes nuts. Chowed on the 7-layer salad, which they are very good, I have to say.
I don't think I liked them when I was that age, though.
No, she was a eater. This young girl, but I haven't had one for a while. But I thought, oh, that sounds kind of refreshing and fun for a book club, and
Oh yeah, I have the perfect bowl for that too. I bet
yeah,
you
like
do
a trifle
too.
bowl or whatever. I do, but it is fun to see it.
Yeah.
It's fun to see what all the things you're eating. So
yeah, what do you put in yours?
The usual suspects: bacon, of course, obviously.
Okay, bacon. That's good.
Yeah, bacon, cheese. It's gonna have to have some eggs. It's gonna have to have some tomatoes, peas, lettuce for sure.
I haven't really made it. I just remember it. I mean, I think I remember seeing beans in some of them and things like that. That's why I didn't know if it was like maybe some of them have a Mexican theme, so they might be
Yeah, I think you can do a lot, but I did find an updated version on a really cool food blog called Real House Moms, and it looked great, and I actually printed it out and tucked it away because I thought, I think that'd be kind of fun to make. Yeah.
Good. Well, that's a great idea.
I'll share it.
Thank you. Okay, so now that we have our food and wine, let's talk about Unspeakable Things by Jess Lowry. So
Yes.
I think I'll start out. I'll just tell you a little bit about Jess Lowry. She is a best-selling Agatha, Anthony, and Lefty Award-nominated author of crime fiction, magical realism, young adult, and nonfiction. So she's kind of all across the board there. And she's a tenured professor of creative writing and sociology. She has a blog in Psychology Today. She's won the Lofts Excellence in Teaching Fellowship. So she's a good teacher, which I can attest to. And then she
Minneapolis has this really cool writing facility called the Loft, and that's what it is.
Oh, that's what it is.
Really
I wondered. I was like, I should look this up because it sounds good. Awesome.
It's a really neat place. Yeah.
And she also speaks about what inspired her first published novel in her popular TEDx talk. So she has a TEDx talk as well, and you can see that through her website or probably wherever they have TEDx talk.
It's a very moving,
yes,
and educational. I mean, I learned a lot actually about how she can suggest people get writing. I just thought it was great.
Yes, I did too. I thought it was inspiring, and she's a strong woman. So can't wait to talk to her. So
I am excited too.
Yeah. So anyway, this book, it's told from the point of view, for the most part, of this 12-year-old girl named Cassie, but basically from her point of view, and she's living in this town, like you said, up in Minnesota, where back in the 80s, there was all these kids boys were going missing, and some of them were coming back different, and so there was just question on what was going on, and the boogeyman, that kind of thing, and so that was kind of going on, and so we had a glimpse inside her life, and she's trying to figure out what's going on too. So she's like a little bit of a sleuth.
Yeah.
So it was it was a really good book. It was it's kind of like what'd they say, part suspense, part coming of age.
Yeah.
And I really liked it. I thought it was really, the description especially, I just felt like it was something that I hadn't really thought about, like from that point of view as much or as clearly. And, but anyway, and I also thought the descriptions of Minnesota were pretty real. And I know that you live up there in that area or whatever, and around that time, and you've already said that it seems pretty accurate, but what do you think? I mean, did it bring flashbacks or?
Oh, she totally captured that time period and the area for sure. I mean, I was actually born in Minnesota, and I have spent a lot of time there, and I'm a huge fan of that state, even though I don't live there right now. But it is a very good description of a small community in the 1980s. I mean, I don't know how to separate it from other areas in the country because that's just what I grew up with. But man, the 1980s references though throughout were just so good. I know. I started highlighting them actually. I thought it was so fun.
I did recognize most of those. I did, because it was my time frame as well, and so I did. I mean, and it kind of reminded me because I was in South Florida, so the atmosphere was completely different. But we did move up to a smaller town in North Carolina, so I kind of must have referenced that a little bit with the woods type atmosphere. And the farm kind of living.
And that was interesting because I always lived in town, and so but I remember my friends who lived out of town, it was very hard for them to get in and hang out with the rest of us who were biking all day and going to the pool and that kind of thing. And people just weren't quite as mobile. But I do remember, my days at that time were just get on your bike and go. Like go to the library, we bike, just bike all over town. And, that's kind of her main means of transportation. And if her parents weren't obviously giving her a ride. And I cannot imagine having that kind of fear that she and her friends were feeling,
right?
Because I always had this kind of I lived in a small town, very free feeling. Like we didn't worry about safety. We really didn't ever.
Yeah.
Really interesting.
Yeah, that is interesting because I probably felt the same way. I didn't really think. I mean, I remember because when we moved to a small town, we lived far out. I mean, we weren't on a farm, it was just everybody kind of was spread out in the mountains. And I remember walking down the road going, I wish somebody would drive by and pick me up and give me a ride the rest of the way home. Like that would be just like, okay.
Right. That'd be fine. Right. Yeah. Amazing.
Yeah, I know.
And now I think back, when my children were and are teenagers, I can know where they're at whenever I want to because I can send them a text or I can track their phone if I wanted to. Yeah. And my parents didn't know where I was for the vast majority of the day because I was with my friends on our bike and it was pretty boring. It was at the park, at the pool, or the library. I wasn't doing too much different than that, but it's really interesting.
It was a lot less of a stressful life. Technology has made that a big difference because honestly, it's not probably too much scarier. I mean, maybe in some places it is, but it's just we don't know about it. Like I didn't know about this going on in Minnesota in this small town.
Yeah.
They were all scared, but I wasn't, and I was just going on because there were 3 channels or maybe more than that, but not many.
Yeah. So. Well, the in the foreword to the book, she talks about how it's kind of been recently in the news, this little pocket of crime, I guess. There was a boy abducted very famously in the 1980s from a small town in Minnesota, and his abduction was just recently solved. And it has a connection to the town in which she grew up. And so that is really a very painful but interesting piece to this backdrop.
Right. And I'm not sure if you knew this or not, but when you get to the end of the book, it ends, and then you're like, and then you wonder, or you might have wondered back because in the prologue it was Cassie as an adult.
Yeah.
And so when it ends, she's still young, so you kind of don't, it doesn't come all the way back, And so I think, some people were like, wait, what happened? And why isn't, we want to know.
Mm-hmm.
And she had originally written an epilogue, but then decided not to put it in this published copy because she was like, well, I kind of felt like everybody might want to imagine their own ending. And so because some people were like, oh, we want to know, she actually has the epilogue on her website. Yeah. So you can read it, but don't read it until after you've read the whole book.
No. But it is good. Yeah.
Yes. And I do think it was good. And she said in future issues, she'll probably put it back in because she didn't realize that people would want it. But yeah, we did. So I was
very satisfying.
Yes.
Yeah, I was too. I will say this, that I think you and I maybe have talked about a while ago about the use of prologues and epilogues. And I will tell you, I now know the correct use of a prologue and epilogue. Like, if I ever wondered before, this is how you do it. I mean, I just thought, oh, she just nailed it. Yeah.
Yes.
Writer's perspective. Since this book is written for adults, but it's from a 12-year-old's perspective, the narrator's 12 years old, we thought it would be interesting to talk about the difference between young adult and adult fiction, because Christie writes young adult, and we've had this conversation a little bit before, so let's get into it.
Yeah, and I mean, it is something that I struggled with when I was first starting out writing Gator Moon. I didn't even know, really, that there were distinct categories that much, I mean, I knew there were books that my daughter would read versus, but I didn't know that it was so particular or whatever. I was a novice. So it wasn't until I went to this workshop by Janice Hardy, and she has a great website. It's called Fiction University. And so she's a great teacher, and she had great information about writing for a young adult. And I really had sort of an aha moment. I'm not kidding you. Like, I walked out of there and I'm like during the whole workshop, I'm like, oh my gosh, that's what I do. Oh my gosh, that's what I'm doing. That's, one of those things when when she said, this is what you need to do if you're writing for young adult.
So when you heard her present, that's when you decided that it was going to be the young adult genre?
Yeah. Because I had written a lot of it, not a lot of it. I'd written, the beginning part, maybe the beginning quarter of the book already. And I just wasn't sure because she's 17, it's big issues. I mean, there's murder, but it was from her perspective. And I just, I could have gone different ways, but the way I had been writing it was geared to, so that if a teen read that book, they would relate to her versus an adult looking back saying, oh yeah, I kind of remember feeling like that, or something like that. And the main story was about adults. The main story is about her and then what she has to do to get where she wants to go. So I don't know. So that's where I kind of felt like it. And I feel like Unspeakable Things also is from Cassie's perspective for sure. We see her, but the main focus is more the adult things because, we know that she's got this crush on this boy, but it doesn't go a lot into it. It just goes into it indirectly related to what's going to happen to that boy or something.
Yeah.
Whereas in a young adult, they kind of dwell on, themselves a lot more.
Right. Well, and I think, too, the way she attached the prologue from the adult Cassie, that kind of made it clear to me that it was, more oriented towards adult readers. Right. But I had looked up too, because you and I talked about this a couple weeks ago, and I was Googling about how to differentiate, and I did find an article too about it, and one of the differentiations that this author pointed out was the themes, like you had talked about. But I think there's, like you said, you have murder in Gator Moon, but I think there's young adult theme of murder, and then there's adult. You know, like as you get older, right? You understand the nuances, and I think that probably is because there are many, many books with a young narrator that are wonderful and famous. I found a list of them and I was like, oh, I forgot how many there were. I mean, so like The Lovely Bones by Alice Sebold, you know, that like yeah,
Secret
and so
Life of Bees. Did you ever read that? Oh my God, that was such a good book.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many, and I was surprised actually.
And
to see
Stephen
that list.
King,
and...
like The Institute,
right?
We just did, you know. It was a lot of it was from a child, but you know what? A lot I've noticed in those too is they might have a child's perspective, but they sometimes have more than one and have an adult perspective. I mean, you have to know what you're gearing towards when you're doing it, because there is definitely more emphasis. And, you know, if your audience is going to be a teenage girl, or boy, even if they, you know, adults like the books. I mean, I read young adult books too. I mean, shoot, I even read I loved Harry Potter, you know?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And
okay, you're going to love this.
Middle grade.
So I think, obviously, this is not a cut and dry thing for everyone, because I found there's kind of a new category now between the two, and they're actually calling it new adult.
Yes.
And
I do
it
know
is
about
that. I did not know about this, and it's like that sliver of time.
It's not really taken off too well.
Well,
they put it in there, but like you know, all those categories are just for the bookstore basically, so they know where to market them, and you know, and it's kind of a fuzzy area that a lot of writers don't want to be in. Like, you know, when I've talked to, because it's basically either young adult with just sex, you know, like more, you know, like going, because young adult, you do this, you know, you can have murder, you can have sex, but you just don't go into it, you know, like detailed, because you know that young people are going to be reading this for sure, because younger than young adult read it. And so the new adult, I just think it's adult. That's what I think. I think it's adult with like a 20-year-old protagonist, right?
Well, yeah. I mean, it's just the nuances of both, it said, you know. And so I thought, well, that's exactly, they're trying to avoid this, trying to avoid which category you're going to be in, I think.
Right.
And thought, it's just too hard to figure out. We want to be both. And
I know. I don't think the agents, most of them don't like that either. You know, they're like, okay, we're going to market one or the other. Sure, it can cross both paths, but we got to get, you know, if we want to get it published, we're going to have to give a clear idea of where this is going to be marketed. Because there is
well, like you said, people already read both. I mean,
yes,
my kids have read what are considered adult books, and I've read what's considered young adult, and without any issue both, at all. Yeah, interesting.
Okay, Cathi. Okay. We're recording this just a tad early. So I don't think we should really have to make ourselves accountable today. Is that all right with you?
Yes. I'm not a big fan of the accountability conversation, so yes.
I won't torture
what do you want to talk
today.
About?
Well, I was wondering, because, you know, I'm a single gal over here. I don't have the love of my life in the next room. So I'm wondering what you like to do for Valentine's Day now that you've been married for a while. If you have any traditions or what? What do you think?
Yes, we do. We've been married for a while. 26.
Wow.
26 years.
Amazing.
And a half.
Congratulations.
I know. Oh, thank you. So we feel like we're kind of, you know, pros at this by this point.
They got married when they were 14.
Yeah. Pretty young. I will tell you what we do. We don't celebrate it. We just
I knew you were going to say. I don't know why I knew that, but I knew it.
We just kind of laugh. We're like, that's for like amateurs, and I will be honest with you. I don't love forced holidays. I really don't love the holidays where all this pressure is on people to do the thing to make this person feel good, and it just like Mother's Day,
right? Well, you know, that's so funny because I have another friend who, you know, married her high school sweetheart. She's been married forever. And And she is the exact same way. She's like, I don't like Valentine's Day. It's a forced holiday, you know? And I was like, well,
I totally get it.
Yeah.
I mean, it's if you want to celebrate it, go
if you
wild.
Take that attitude, I think that's great because you can still enjoy it. You can still have fun with it, even if you don't, have.
We just don't.
Right. I mean, but if you ever wanted to, that's what I'm saying. It's a no pressure thing, and that's why it shouldn't really be a pressure thing for any age. It's supposed to be just like fun, It starts out as fun in school, but then all of a sudden it gets into being, well, I think it's still fun, like attitude wise, until you get some crazy person that's like, I gotta have a date.
Yeah, no, that's so silly. But
it's like a good excuse to go out a different night of the week, except for this year it's on a Friday.
I know.
So that's
going to be very good for business.
Yeah.
That's very good for business. I will tell you this. My sister works part-time in a floral shop. And Valentine's Day is such a huge amount of work for people that work in florist shops.
Yep.
I mean, her stories are absolutely hilarious. People coming in like frantic, at 5:30 always. Like, I need, 3 dozen roses. And she's like, yeah, good luck. But here's a plant. I've got a plant left. Like they completely sell their floral shop out. And it's really funny to hear this story. So we our routine is to kind of giggle about it and do whatever we do, and we're pretty
right. Well,
content,
I don't even do the giggling, but
I was going to say, what are you going to do?
I Googled, I was like, single stuff, because I did, and I can't remember where it was, if it was like in a different town. I don't know if it was like, a national show that I was watching where they were interviewing a chef who does a singles menu for Valentine's Day. So has a special menu just for singles.
Now that would be fun.
Yeah. And she started doing that a long time ago, and and it's a fun thing. So I was like, I wonder what's going on around here. So I'm like, Valentine's Day activities for singles in Fort Lauderdale.
Yeah.
And
you must have tons of options.
Well, I don't know. There was, of course there's like Valentine's speed dating, but those are
oh my gosh,
all geared to like 20, 30-year-olds. Too young, So I found another one. It's called Lock and Key Events. Have you ever heard of this?
I have not.
It's a fun, new, interactive dating event for singles. So they have it like on the 13th or something.
They like handcuff you to each other?
No. When you come in, the men get, I know, right? Well, I'll never tell. No, when you get there, the men have keys and the women have locks. And so
that's pretty phallic, isn't it?
Right.
I'm sorry. Oh probably better take that out.
Yeah, no, we're not taking that. Do not take that out. So anyway, but every key matches 2 to 3 locks. See, so you go around and you try the locks, and that's how you, talk to people. And then if you find your match,
it's a great conversation starter,
right?
Yeah.
That's basically what it is.
Love it.
And it was for an age range from like, well, I don't know. It went like, I think it was like 25 to 55 or something. So I was like, okay, that's a good range because, I don't want to just have to meet like 20-year-old guys or something. So not that I would mind, but that would be a little creepy.
That's not the worst thing, is it? Yeah. Well, I hope you do that because I want you to report back because I'm very curious about this.
Oh, you know what? I should try it. I should.
You should.
If I need you to one of my single friends to go with me. I'm like,
yeah, you need to do some investigative reporting. I want to hear back about this because that's actually a really cool idea. I think.
Yeah,
just a really fun thing to hear about. So okay, we're gonna task you to do that now.
All right.
So another great book and a really fun episode. I really suggest people go out and get Unspeakable Things by Jess Lowry.
Yes, and don't forget to listen next week because we will talk with Jess Lowry for our Corks and Conversation episode.
Can't wait. Thanks to our mysterious foodies out there for listening and sharing. Check out our website, gameofbookspodcast.com, where you can find links to all we talk about. And if you subscribe to our weekly newsletter, you can get those links sent directly to you, along with any exciting updates. We are also on Facebook and Twitter under @GOBWriters.
And if you enjoyed this episode as much as we did, we would love to hear from you, and please subscribe to Game of Books wherever you listen to podcasts so you don't miss any of our book club ideas and Corks and Conversations with award-winning and best-selling authors.
That's all for today's episode of Game of Books Podcast, where we share food, wine, and mystery every Friday morning, just in time for the weekend.
This is Christie
and Cathi
saying thanks for listening.
Bye,
everybody.